Kisakukut, good evening, and welcome to the International Elk-Kootenai Watershed Study Board public webinar on the draft plan of study. My name is Patrick Williston, and I'm speaking to you from the ancestral and unceded territory, the lands and waters, the Yinta of the Wet'suwet'en peoples in north central British Columbia, where I call my home in Smithers. I'm one of 6 study managers from Canada, the United States, and the Ktunaxa Nation who are supporting an 8-person study board that you will be meeting shortly. I've been asked by the study board to be this evening's MC. Thank you for joining us this evening. We are grateful for the time and energy that you bring to this important work. We forward the slide. The shared watersheds between Canada and the United States are home to Indigenous nations that have had relationships in these shared watersheds since time before memory, long before Canada and the United States existed. They are the original protectors and managers of these lands, akamas, and waters, the wu'u. The study board commits to working closely with the Ktunaxa Nation and its member tribes and First Nations, and with all governments involved with this reference. And the study board welcomes comments and questions from the public as we work to care for these lands and waters. In a minute, I'm going to hand things over to the co-chairs of the study board who will introduce you to the board. But before we get to that, I'd like to quickly walk through this evening's agenda. Next slide. So after the introductions, I can see we'll reverse 2 and 3. We'll start with the introductions to the study board, and then there will be an overview of the International Joint Commission. This is going to be followed by a look at the plan of study that I hope you've had a chance to read. And we'll also be covering future engagement opportunities and communications with the study board. The final segment this evening is going to be a question and comment period. We flip to the next slide there. At the top of your screen, you're going to see a Q&A icon. At any time during the meeting this evening, you're invited to click on that Q&A icon and submit a question or a comment to the study board. When you click on the icon, comment box is going to open. You can type your question or comment into that box and press send. So then during the meeting, the study board will receive and review these questions and comments. And at the end of the meeting, during the final segment there, the study board will try to provide answers to the questions that have been submitted. Some of the questions may require a deeper dive than is possible on the fly this evening, and others may require further progress of the actual study that's being proposed. We may not be able to speak to all of the questions and comments this evening. However, all the submissions will be recorded and will be considered by the study board as it finalizes this plan of study for delivery to the International Joint Commission. Members of the public are welcome to send comments on the draft plan of study to the International Joint Commission at the email at the bottom of this slide, elk@ijc.org. The public comment period started on February 3rd and will close at 5 p.m. Pacific time or 6 p.m. Mountain time on February 17th. And with that, I'm going to pass it over to Tom Bansack and Oliver Brandis, who are the co-chairs of the International Elk-Kootenai Watershed Study Board. Tahas. Tom.
Thank you, Patrick. Welcome, everyone. Thank you very much for joining and spending some of your evening with us here tonight. My name is Tom Bansack, and I'm one of the study board co-chairs. I live in Kalispell, Montana, but today I'm on the east shore of Flathead Lake, Montana, within the territory of the Bitterroot, Salish, Upper Pend Oreille, and Kootenai tribes on the Flathead Reservation of the Confederated Salish and Kootenai tribes. I'm an aquatic ecologist and serve as Associate Director at the University of Montana's Flathead Lake Biological Station. And I'm excited about this opportunity to work with my study board colleagues and the International Joint Commission to help protect the waters of our world. Um, I'm going to pass things off to my fellow co-chair, Oliver Brandis, and Oliver will introduce himself and then the remaining members of the study board.
Thank you, Tom, and good evening and greetings from the Canadian West Coast. I'm Oliver Brandis, and I'm coming to you from the mouth of the Colquitts Creek in Lekwungen-speaking People's Territory in Victoria, BC, and I'm grateful. I'm the co-chair, as Tom indicated, of the International Elk-Kootenai Watershed Study Board, and I am at the University of Victoria's Centre for Global Studies, where I am a co-director of the Polis Project on Ecological Governance and also lead the Polis Watershed Security Project. My educational background is in law, economics, public policy, and ecological restoration. I am pleased to be with you this evening and on this public webinar about this important work. I look forward to engaging in the material, and I will now take this opportunity to bring up my fellow colleagues on the study board, starting with Stella, who will introduce herself, as will the rest.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Stella Swanson. I'm an aquatic biologist and aquatic toxicologist. I have a home just outside of Fernie, BC, and many of you will have had the opportunity to meet me. If you've been colleagues of mine, I really look forward to continuing the work that has already been well underway in understanding the situation in the Elk-Kootenai watershed. And I am privileged to live and work in Yakinakuchayat territory, the land of the raven.
Thank you, Stella. Jill.
Hi, good evening to everybody. I'm Jill Frankfurter. I'm one of the United States members, and I sit in Helena, Montana. So I sit outside of the basin a little bit. I recently retired from the U.S. Geological Survey, retired in June, and was working in the Nevada Water Science Center and just moved back to Montana. So it's great to be back. My educational background is in aquatic ecology, but I'm a hydrologist with an emphasis in water quality also. So it's great to get to know everybody and to get a chance to work on the study. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jill. Kelly, you're next.
Hi, my name is Kelly McKittrick. I'm located at the University of Calgary, but tonight I'm talking to you from the city of Stratford, Ontario, which is traditional territory of the Anishinaabeg, Haudenosaunee, Ojibwe, Chippewa, and Métis peoples. My expertise is in ecotoxicology and the design of environmental monitoring programs, and I'm very pleased to be working with the others on this study board.
Wonderful. Richard?
Hello, I'm Richard DiGiulio. I'm a professor of environmental toxicology at Duke University in North Carolina. So I think I represent the eastern half of the continent here. In any event, it's a real pleasure and privilege to be involved in this board. Thank you.
Thank you, Richard. Clayton, you're next. Clayton, your mic is muted.
Well, of course it is. Thank you and welcome. My name is Clayton Matt. I'm a member of the Confederated Salish Kootenai Tribes. As a study board member, I participate and work here from Pablo, Montana on the Flathead Reservation. In addition to this board, I'm also the chair of the Flathead Reservation Water Management Board, and I'm currently teaching a class on watershed management at Salish Kootenai College. So welcome to all of you. Look forward to all of our work and hearing your input. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Clayton. Vi, we'd love to hear from you.
Good evening. My name is Violet Birdstone. I'm a Tunaha elder from the Aka First Nation in Cranbrook. as I live in Vancouver in the land of the Tsleil-Waututh, Musqueam, and Squamish First Nations. As a board member, I share the Ktunaxa perspective within the study area. My background is in language and history, and I think that this helps me with my work with the board. Thank you.
Wonderful, Vi. Thank you very much. We're going to get rolling on some of the content now that you've met the study board. So next slide. What I'll provide, and Tom and I will be working together, and then we'll all be engaged in the more detailed conversation and questions that come after. But I'm going to start with the overview of some of the institutional aspects. So the International Joint Commission. Next slide. And the International Joint Commission is an impartial, independent, binational Canadian-United States treaty organization. It goes back to 1909 pursuant to the Boundary Waters Treaty, which enabled the cooperative management and protection of the freshwater lakes and rivers along the shared border. It employs joint science-based fact-finding as a foundation for building consensus and determining appropriate action. Importantly, it fosters this public awareness and affords all interested parties a convenient opportunity to be heard. Next slide. A key part of the International Joint Commission is our 6 commissioners, and you can see them here and their pictures. But there's a number of other supporting organizations. You can see in the bottom left the large number of people and those working both for the IJC, but the committees, the advisory groups across the whole region. And there are 3 important offices that support the IJC commissioners and the programs. And they're located in Ottawa in Canada, Washington in the United States, and Windsor, which is in Ontario, but is a joint office. Next slide. Now, the International Joint Commission assists Canada and the United States in preventing and resolving disputes over shared waters, as I've indicated. And there's 2 main ways this is done. The first is what's called an application, and this is where approving and overseeing projects that use, obstruct, or divert boundary waters or other waters crossing the boundary. And then there are references, which is what brings us here today. Responding to joint requests from the Canadian and United States governments to study and report on questions and matters of difference. Often references are time limited, and the IJC, via study board, that's us, investigates and reports back to the governments on the elements outlined in the joint reference letters. And all of this information can be found on the website. Next slide. So I'm going to just briefly introduce some of the this beautiful international Elk-Kootenai watershed, both the reference and the study board. So next slide. So a critical date and what for us at the study board really got us started was this March 2024 reference, where the governments of Canada and the United States, in partnership with the Ktunaxa Nation, sent a reference to the IJC. This was historic as it involved all 3 parties. References ask IJC to establish a study board to convene experts and knowledge holders to do a few things. 1, conduct transparent and coordinated transboundary data, information, and knowledge sharing. Secondly, to share, synthesize, and analyze data and information to support a common understanding of pollution within the watershed and its impact on people and species. A final report and recommendations to the IJC is due in September 2026, so you can see a fairly compressed timeline. Next slide. So the IJC has some responsibilities under this reference. The proposal attached to the reference was developed in partnership with officials from the Ktunaxa Nation and has the support of the nation's leadership. This was a historic event. The proposal describes and contextualizes the role of the IJC to do two main things, as you can see in this visual. It assists in the establishment of a governance body and convene experts and knowledge holders in a study board. Again, that's us, to report and make recommendations to reduce and mitigate the impacts of water pollution in the Kootenai watershed. Next slide. Now, this is the study area, and you can see that this is the map. The focus of the board's work will be the Kootenai River, main, and the Elk River tributary. Information on the other tributaries, so the larger watershed, will be used to assist in the evaluation of cumulative effects and the impacts on these areas. And you can see, if you look closely, the slightly darker blue of the main focus. As you can see, the Kootenai Basin covers parts of southeastern British Columbia and northwestern Montana and northern Idaho, all of which are part of the Ktunaxa Territory. The reference is the first reference to the IJC that the two federal governments have developed in partnership with First Nations and Indigenous groups, with the signatories from Canada, the United States, and the Transboundary Ktunaxa Nation. This is particularly important because of the geography and the history of the watershed, as you can see here. The headwaters start in Canada, BC, and flow across the international border into the United States, into Montana, and then travels west, north back into Canada, again into Kootenai Lake, until it meets the confluence of the Columbia River. Next slide. Now, this is the proposed structure, some of which is already in place and some is still being put in place. I'm going to attempt to give a little summary. There's lots of detail here, and of course you can go to the plan of study draft to see that detail. Now, the study board, as we've indicated, is created by the International Joint Commission to deliver on the reference given to it by the Government of Canada and the United States, and in partnership with the Ktunaxa Nation. It's based on study boards that have been established by the IJC elsewhere and along the border. Roughly speaking, the structure can be broken down into two parts: a part that fulfills the specifics of the reference assigned to the study board, and a part that provides advice and input to the IJC on the work that is being done. In general, and this is an important principle, the IJC strives for parity in populating both the study board and all the supporting or ancillary bodies and entities, so the work is even. Under this reference, wherever possible and throughout, it also includes the Ktunaxa people are directly involved. Within the parameters of the reference, as defined by the IJC, the study board works as an independent entity. We, the members of the study board, are appointed by the IJC. We, along with the study management team and the technical working group, work under what's known as personal professional capacity. In other words, we work under the directive issued to us by IJC to address matters concerning this watershed, and not as members of our respective agency, ministries, organizations, or other homes. The study board is the decision-making body. Ultimately, it is responsible for the final report that is submitted to the IJC. The study management team, which you met Patrick, and we have many others, provide organizational and administrative support to the study board. The technical working groups are created by the study board under this reference, and it is envisioned that 4 technical working groups will be needed to fulfill the directive, and that's in the bottom right. The study board provides direction to the TWIGs, and the study management team manages the technical working groups. Turning to the part of this structure that provides advice and input, in recognizing the Ktunaxa Nation as a partner in the reference to the IJC, there is a Council of Indigenous Knowledge Holders, under which there is a Council of Kasanka and Ktunaxa Knowledge Holders, and we'll learn more about that shortly. The Council is involved with the work of the study board on an ongoing basis. It is meant to provide the cultural support and to facilitate dialogue with the Ktunaxa. The Council is free to create its own working groups to support its efforts in support of the reference and to serve the needs of its community. And you can see that on the left. As per the typical IJC practices, advisory groups are struck to ensure the interests in the watersheds are able to provide input on the work of the study board. These members are appointed by the IJC itself. Under this reference, there are three: Public Advisory Group, an Industry Advisory Group, and a Council of Governments Advisory Group. In general, the advisory groups are expected to provide input on major products of the study board, such as this plan of study and interim report and final report. Lastly, in the top left, you'll see a green circle, and this is an independent review group that is created by the IJC. So members are appointed by the IJC, and this group provides a final technical peer review of the major products of the study board before they are formally submitted to the IJC. The IJC staff support teams provide and input advice and support to the study board as a whole, and is the primary link between the study board and the IJC commissioners. So this is a quick summary of this proposed structure. And again, if you like a bit more detail, please look at the document itself. Next slide. So we have some duties, and the important duties are around conducting broad engagement, and you can see the range, but importantly with the public and others who live or work or have interest in the watershed. An important part of our work will be share, synthesize, and analyze data and information to support a common understanding of pollution within the watershed and the impacts of that pollution on people and the species. And finally, it is to report and recommend on governance and findings of the analysis of data and information, including the implementation of its recommendations, and to do so in a transparent and publicly available format. With this summary in mind, I will now pass it off to my co-chair, Tom, who will dig into a little more detail. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Oliver. Appreciate all the information you provided. Our study board has been tasked by the IJC to work with the study management team, technical working groups, advisory groups, Council of Indigenous Knowledge, and Council of Kasanka and Tanaha knowledge holders to examine pollution within the Kootenai watershed and the impacts of that pollution on people and species. This study and the resultant report will be generated transparently and will be publicly available. The study and report will compile and use the best available observational data, scientific research, and Indigenous knowledge related to the sources of, status of, and trends in pollution and associated effects on ecosystem and human health. Data and research gaps, assumptions, and uncertainty will be determined with an eye towards improving our collective understanding of pollution in the Kootenai watershed. The study will include a synthesis of available data and scientific understanding about the contaminants of concern and affected resources. And the report will include recommendations for strengthening, coordinating, and prioritizing science monitoring, research, and the inclusion of Indigenous knowledge. The report will also suggest next steps, including methods and procedures for ongoing monitoring and data analyses to further understand the extent, trends, and mitigation of pollution in the watershed. Next slide, please. The timeline for this study is 2 years from September 2024, the creation of the study board in the upper left in orange, through September 2026 in teal in the bottom center of the graphic. Throughout this process, there'll be multiple informative sessions and opportunities for public input and advisory group input. The first step that this study board has been working on since October is to create the plan of study, basically a work plan or guiding document for the efforts that will be undertaken during the next year and a half. It is the draft plan of study that we are seeking your input on here tonight and through February 17th. Hopefully you've had a chance to review it already. We're requesting and will incorporate input into the next draft of the plan of study that we will provide to the International Joint Commission for review in late February, later this month. Following the International Joint Commission feedback and after about 6 months of hard, grueling work on the study, in September 2025, purple on the right-hand side. The study board will produce an interim report about the work that has been conducted and what will be forthcoming to the IJC for their review and further input. So this plan of study is an iterative document, lots of input, lots of review and incorporation of feedback. The work on the study will continue, will be evaluated by the study board, who will then formulate recommendations in a final report, which will include next steps and another plan of study for additional work needed in the future. This final report is due in September 2026, bottom center of the graphic. As I mentioned previously, along the way, there will be multiple opportunities for sharing of knowledge and providing input by all interested parties. Next slide, please. So a little bit more about the draft plan of study itself. Next slide, please. The study board's role is basically to assist the International Joint Commission by completing the tasks assigned in the guiding document, the reference. Next slide, please. And so what is this plan of study? As mentioned previously, it's basically the work plan that will guide the study looking into water pollution in the Elk-Kootenai watershed. Next slide, please. Given the historic nature of this, the fact that this is the first time that Indigenous peoples were involved in the development of the reference, the goal is for our Indigenous partners to be consulted regularly and provide input every step of the way. Our goal is to engage with the Transboundary Ktunaxa Nation early, often, and deeply, as my co-chair Oliver says in pretty much every meeting that we have. To elaborate more on the role of the Council of Kasanka and Ktunaxa knowledge holders, I'd like to pass things off to my fellow study board member, Violet Birdstone.
The Council of Kasanka Ktunaxa knowledge holders incorporates Indigenous knowledge and language into the International East Kootenai Water Study Board. Elk-Kootenai, the Ktunaxa belief in all living things, expresses the interrelatedness of culture, language, and knowledge. There will be interactive across the Council of Ktunaxa knowledge holders and each of the technical working groups, and participation from Ktunaxa staff as needed and available within the technical working groups. The IEK Working Study Board will ensure that Ktunaxa oversight, voice, and principal values are represented through consistent and iterative engagement with the Council. The Elk-Kootenai, the belief in all living things was traditional knowledge known to the Ktunaxa for many, many years, but it wasn't till about 1999 that a study was conducted to document the information. And from that, it's been passed on to the younger generations. And there was a small little handbook of plants and edible plants, and trees that was produced, which gave everyone the which ensured that the knowledge would be recorded. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Vi. We greatly appreciate what you've shared and what you bring to this study board. Next slide, please. A very important part of this study will be the technical working groups. These groups will be composed of a diverse group of experts in the identified fields of water quality, human health and well-being, impacts to ecosystems, including cumulative effects, and mitigation efforts, activities, and available tools. Once assembled, these technical working groups will do a lot of the heavy lifting on this study, creating and executing their own work plan to compile, analyze, and synthesize existing available data, working closely with the study management team and the study board. These technical working groups will provide results of their inquiries to be incorporated into the interim and final reports. Next slide, please. So back to the products that will be generated. We are currently gathering feedback on our draft phase 1 plan of study, and that will guide our efforts over the next year and a half. In December 2025, we will generate an interim or progress report highlighting progress, achievements, status of the study on the whole, and then ultimately a final report will be produced with recommendations and proposed future studies, and this is due in September 2026. Next slide, please. Along the way, this study will be reviewed by multiple entities, internal and external. The study board provides oversight and review of every step along the way. As Oliver mentioned before, we're kind of directing things, everything that happens. And then there will be regular interactions with the Council of Kasanka and Tanaha knowledge holders. Additionally, there will be agency technical review of the models and data and products that are being used by the technical working groups. And then finally, there's an independent review group, a panel of impartial external experts that will be established by the International Joint Commission, who will take an outside look at everything that goes into and comes out of this study. Next slide, please. So engagement and communication is central to the success of this whole process. The directions to the study board state that we will conduct broad engagement with an overarching goal to build relationships and seek documentation, seek information, and consider the resulting input and perspectives. Next slide, please. Our study board is working collaboratively, not just internally, but also with the International Joint Commission, the study management team, external experts, interested parties, and the collection of information and storage of what is generated is very important, and it is fostered through shared storage location for files, and ultimately the data analysis projects will be housed as well. And communication is central to the success of this study. We will have open channels of communication of a variety of different methods to share updates and information about the study and to receive your input, questions, and comments. Next slide, please. We will have regular iterative communication and engagement with the advisory groups and with the Council of Knowledge Holders throughout this study. The Council are our partners throughout this whole process. The advisory groups will help guide the study and serve as sounding boards for us here on the study board and throughout the stages of the next year and a half. Next slide, please. So engagement and communication, again, are central and very important. Our instructions state that we should provide opportunities for direct in-person or virtual engagement with federal, provincial, state, First Nations, Métis, tribal governments, industry, local communities, organizations, the public, and others who live, work, or have interests in the watershed. And our plan is basically to do a little bit of everything. We will have press releases, webinars, newsletters, public meetings, social media, and listening sessions. So the point is for us to engage all interested parties frequently and to incorporate what we hear, whether it's data, whether it's feedback or advice, into the study and the final products. Next slide, please. Our instructions also state that engagement related to all of the deliverables include a public comment period of not less than 2 weeks. We are currently within the public comment period for our draft plan of study, and comments will be received through February 17th. Once we have all of the comments, we will incorporate those into the next draft that goes to the International Joint Commission for review and approval. We are aware that there are lots of sources of data and knowledge already. We are wanting to compile this information and use it in the study, so we ask you to contribute. We invite you to comment on the draft plan of study, in particular addressing the following questions. Are there aspects you consider central to the principal issues that you would like to be considered for inclusion? Are there specific questions related to the study board's directed task that you would like to be considered as the technical working groups develop their approach? Is there any information you would like to share with the board for their consideration? For example, historical data, anecdotal information, knowledge of past, current, upcoming projects that could have a bearing on water quality in the watershed. There are multiple ways to contribute. In the bottom left of this slide is the email address, elk@ijc.org, and then the website for the draft plan of study is in the bottom left corner. Next slide, please.
And
So thank you so much. Sorry, go ahead,
ahead.
Oliver.
No, you go, Tom.
I was just going to say thank you so much for spending your time with us this evening. We greatly appreciate your interest in the study and the process. We hope that you've learned more about the Elk-Kootenai reference, and we invite your input and questions. Oliver?
Yeah, I was just going to emphasize that we appreciate the attention. And I'd just like to emphasize that we certainly understand there are many sources of information and data, lots of unbelievable work already being done, and we are grateful to receive any additional information, data, and insights. We will try not to reinvent the wheel, so we'd like to gather as much information to enhance our work as possible.
I'm just going to remind all the folks gathered this evening that we do have a question and answer function there at the top of your screen. And I strongly encourage you to, if you have a question that you might like the study board to give a crack at answering, I encourage you to click on that button and write your question in. And we can take a few minutes this evening to see if we can provide an answer to you. Got this window available to us. And you certainly don't want me to try to fill the time. I think looks like we do have a few questions coming in, so this is great. Thank you so much. I recognize that there are quite a number of folks on the call. It looks like we have a all right. Someone's requested a copy of the slide that has the three main questions, Tom, that you posed that the study board is specifically looking for responses to. So I think that is that one or two slides back there?
I believe it's one slide back, and it is also on the Elk-Kootenai Watershed Study web page on the public consultation link.
Okay, so there's two places we can refresh our memories from looking at the website there. We have another question here. That is a question about social media and whether we will be posting on community Facebook pages to share news about future webinars or requests for input. So that might be a question from for our IJC team if we're utilizing social media to reach out regarding future opportunities for public input. So I may turn it over to, we do have a few folks from the IJC team here. We've got Lynn Severin and Joe Werba joining us this evening. Wondering if Lynn or Joe, you would be able to speak to whether or not there is information regarding this this study on social media channels.
Yes, actually, my name is Lynn Sabrai, and just to give you a little bit of background, I am from the Ottawa section of the IJC. With respect to that question, I will say that the study board does have a communication and engagement committee that will be quite active. This is something that Tom and Oliver spoke to. Typically, we do post, so the IJC itself will post to the its own social media channels, but the board's committee can engage with other ways. Another way that information will be divulged will be through the advisory groups. Joe, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I would just add that if you have specific community Facebook pages that you think would be a good place for the study board to reach out to, we would welcome your suggestions. And you can certainly put that in your public comment or even in the comments here. So I'm not sure we know all of the community pages that would be the most relevant. Certainly not as well as all of you do.
Right, we've keep your questions coming in. We've got a team mobilized, ready to try to support answering anything that you might like to raise this evening. Do you have another question about the contents of the report and just specifically what the report, how the report speaks to mitigation solutions?
Maybe I'll jump in there. That's the work ahead, really. So that's going to be one of the topics. And at this point, we don't have any conclusions or any material. That's what we're building. And so again, I would invite you to take a look at how we've designed the work ahead. And if you had any comments, ways to improve it, importantly, if you have sources of information, data, insights, suggestions, that's the kind of material that we're going to want to be reviewing and understanding. Tom, do you have anything to
add? Just that a technical working group will be assigned to look at the available tools and related to mitigation, but the study board feels that mitigation is an important topic and it is included.
Thanks, Tom. Thanks, Oliver. So we have a question here about what strategies or processes will be implemented by the study board to select independent scientists or companies through the data collection phase of the study.
I'm going to jump in and first of all, just clarify that during the study, we will be compiling existing data. We won't be doing studies that collect new data. Just the time frame is too short. I'm new to this, but my understanding of how we will select independent scientists is brainstorming as a group. We have a lot of expertise on the study board, the study management team, and within the IJC, and we'll be collectively bringing those suggestions together and then talking through it as a group. That has not happened yet, so that's just my anticipation of what is to come.
And maybe just to add a little bit to the question of independence and accountability, the study board, as I noted earlier, is appointed by the commissioners, and we all are working in our personal professional capacity. So we are independent, and we take all the information, and with the help of the study management team and the various advisory councils and the Tanaha knowledge holders, we help put that information together. So it is a combination of getting the right kind of information in front of us, but then using our team analysis, our team skills. As you can hear, we have a range of backgrounds to ensure that the information is, independent, appropriate, and that there's accountability throughout. And you can see that is through the various reviews and the various ways we're going to share all the information. So step by step, everything will be transparent.
Thank you. We do have a very technical question with respect to units of measurements used in the plan of study. There is reference in the draft plan of study to values in micrograms per liter. And there's just maybe looking for an explanation of micrograms per liter, which is also another way of saying parts per billion. I don't know, perhaps that's another expression that the public may be more familiar with, parts per billion, but the parts per billion is equivalent to micrograms per liter. So we do have a question about the interaction between advisory groups and the Indigenous community. So I think there is interest in perhaps some interaction between the Indigenous community and some of the advisory groups. So that's something you would like to speak to?
Well, maybe all I'll say is, I think any suggestions to make the study better will be welcome. And so that's something that, if you have something in mind, I'm a little unclear, but I think offering suggestions or advice, one of our jobs is to facilitate the best possible product and making sure that we've talked to and heard from all the key people who want to share their information. So if there's value add in that, I don't see why we can't support it. But at this stage, I'd say that's part of the comments maybe you provide as part of this plan of study review, and we can decide as a team how we best incorporate or address those kinds of suggestions.
There was an effort to include members of the Indigenous communities in the advisory groups, and so there may be a way for those members to foster more interaction.
So we've got another question about data collection and recognizing the challenges involved with collecting data. In addition to government water quality data, will you also be reaching out to industry and industry regulators for sources of data?
I'll jump in. Absolutely. The goal is to compile all existing data from any source. And if folks on this call know about data, bring it to the table, and our topical experts on the technical working groups and the study management team will include it in their analyses and syntheses.
Thanks, Tom. We've got a question about transparency and just recognizing that historically there have been difficulties with transparency. The question is, will the historical testing, the data derived from historical tests be used along with more recent testing, and will that be made readily available? So basically, will historic data and more recent data be made publicly available, I think.
I mean, I can't exactly answer the question in the sense that all data that's relevant to the focus work will be brought. One of the important pieces will be to assemble this data and provide it in as transparent a way as possible. So if the historical data helps us do our work, it will absolutely be part of what we consider. And furthermore, as we gather all the data together, I do believe that we're going to make it available. And so therefore, again, as it's relevant, as it fits to the directive and our reference, we will certainly include it. So if you have knowledge of such data or such data is available, we would love to hear about it, and please share it with us.
We have perhaps a similar question. It's about the transparency and public availability of monitoring data that's generated through industry. So the question is, will industry monitoring data and modeling be made publicly available?
I know any products of the analyses done by the study and by the working groups will be made available, but I don't necessarily know if we will be given data by some sources that they don't want us to release. I guess I don't know the answer to that yet.
All right, the questions are coming in hard and fast. Thank you, everyone, for helping us out and for making use of the question and answer function of this meeting. Grateful for your input here. Will the study be used as a guide going forward for the management policies in the Kootenai watershed, taking into consideration the needs of the communities that surround the watershed?
Well, it's a bit of a procedural question. We, the study board, put together our starting with plan of study and eventual study itself, and that through various steps goes to the commissioners, and then that will become an IJC report. Of course, the work as relevant will help inform all manner of decisions by the various authority holders. But until our work is adopted by the commissioners and the IJC, it will be up to the authority holders themselves to make those decisions.
And for this reference, the IJC created the study board, us, to generate this study. And then ultimately our plan and recommendations will go to the other body created by this reference, the governance body, that represents all of the governments that exist within the study area. And then my understanding is that it is up to them to come up with some solutions and decisions to move forward.
Maybe just to add, in essence, to act on the recommendations or to assess the recommendations. We as an independent body will do obviously the best of our ability and have hopefully the expertise and the time and the supporting capacity to address it in a comprehensive way. But our job, like a relay race, is to run one leg of the race.
Okay, there's a question about a future-looking water quality model that's used in the Elk Valley. And the question is, will the Elk Valley water quality model and data be provided in full for study board consideration? And I'm not sure that that's an easy one for the study board to answer. It's really, I think, probably is a topic that will be discussed in full in a technical working group. So some of these technical questions that have been posed are really something that will be unpacked in further detail as the technical working groups undertake their tasks and develop their scope of work. Oh, I see. Okay, there's a question here about the BC selenium standard. So we are getting into some of the technical nitty-gritty here. That is probably a little bit beyond the scope of work, but there is a question for clarification that we may be able to provide a response in writing in the future. It's a question about different selenium guidelines cited in the plan of study. I think on there's two values cited, 10 micrograms per liter on one page and 2 micrograms in another section. And that may reflect the BC water quality guideline for drinking water, which is 10, and for the protection of aquatic life, which is 2 micrograms per liter. So hopefully that helps the person asking the question why there's two different numbers for the BC water quality guideline. One is for drinking water and one is for the protection of aquatic life.
So you can see we're very lucky to have the study management team who also have direct expertise, and that will be complemented by our technical working groups, which we introduced. So we will most certainly be able to address these kinds of nuances as we go ahead with the work. Thank you, Patrick, for your insights here.
Yeah, not a worry. We recognize that many people have read, and we're grateful for folks on the call for carefully reading the plan of study. And my understanding is that the IJC has already received quite a lot of input, so that's going to be very helpful going forward in the coming days here as the study board looks to finalize the plan of study for submission to the International Joint Commission. All right, we do have a question about media inquiries. So can study board members speak to the press about their work on the IJC? Or are they only permitted to discuss their independent work?
I'll jump in. So when study board members speak to the media about this project, we will be representing all members of the study board. So we need to have a unified voice. So when we are working together, our communications will be the consensus voice of the whole group. And so, I'd be able to talk about my work in my regular job, about me and my work, but when speaking as a member of the study board and as the co-chair, it will be a representation of what we collectively want to put out there. But we welcome media inquiries, and we have a process in place to respond to those. We want to communicate with interested community members across Montana, Idaho, and British Columbia and beyond.
Yeah, we certainly recognize the importance of media in all its forms to help amplify and get the message out. And so, again, in an effort to be as transparent as possible and to share the information as widely as possible, we do have a focus on, or have a capacity available to engage. So if there's specific media interested, we invite you to reach out, and again, through our IJC colleagues and capacity, we should be able to provide any of the information that is relevant and wanting to share it as widely as possible. I think Patrick's taking in information in real time here.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Someone's asking questions that kind of speak a little bit directly to my day job. So they're asking about the Elk Valley Water Quality Plan, and and it's a little bit challenging to know exactly how to respond. It does. I think it's how best to respond to this. Yeah, I think there's definitely going to be some interaction between all the work that's done under existing regulation and the data gathering and analyses that will happen under the purview of the IJC and the technical working group. There's going to be some, but the questions that have been raised here are really specific to regulating a part of the watershed, not the entire watershed, just a portion of the watershed as it pertains to the upper end of the Elk and into the reservoir. And I think we're going to have to get back to the question, perhaps with a little bit more consideration, and a little challenging to handle that just on the fly this evening. So we'll get back to you on the question regarding the kind of the relationship between existing policy and the work of the IJC. We're just standing by and making ourselves available. If there are additional questions, don't feel shy. Please go ahead and
Tom and Oliver, it's Stella. I might be able to help a little bit with an earlier question around the use of historic data. if there's no other questions to answer at this point, I could expand on that topic a little bit.
Yes, lovely. Please do.
Okay, so yeah, many agencies and organizations have grappled with the appropriate use of historic data. And certainly the board is aware of the challenges associated with using historic data, but we are, as already stated, very keen to A, make sure we're aware of all the existence of all historic data, and B, develop methods whereby we identify the data which are valid and appropriate for use, and to be very transparent in terms of any concerns we may have about the use of those data. Any of you who have experience with the use of historic data and screening of said data for quality and validity, we would be very happy to hear from you, either through the advisory council or directly. So that was a really good question, and we look forward to any further input on that.
I wonder, Patrick, if we give it a few more moments and again invite people, maybe flip back to the other public input slide. And if people have further thoughts at a later time, we can just make it super clear that they can share their ideas, their concerns. I guess we'll reiterate. I think Tom mentioned it, and I'll reiterate it imperfectly, that there will be numerous other opportunities where we will be engaging through events like this, through other media, through newsletter, all of which will funnel information back. So we don't have to feel like we have to get it all out here. We recognize we're still in the early stages, and really this presentation was mostly about the state of our plan of study, in essence, how we intend to do the work going forward, rather than the insights and thoughts, because we haven't done the work yet. And so I hope everyone out there will see that this is part of an ongoing dialogue, really, over the next number of months and years as we build this body of work.
Well put. Well, it's looking like we have run toward the end here of our questions for this evening. And we folks have access now to the plan of study and are aware that next Monday will the public comment period will draw to a close, and this study board who you've met this evening will be reviewing all the comments you've submitted and be working that up toward a final document to submit to the International Joint Commission. I think.
Patrick, I think we missed one question. This is Stella again. It's data collection is always a challenge. In addition to government water quality data, will you also reach out to industry and industry regulators? Was the question.
Yeah, we did speak to that question.
Okay.
And so the answer is absolutely.
Absolutely, right.
Yeah. But thank you, because I am trying to, as you are aware, trying to multitask, but thank you for checking up on that, Stella. And and not only industry and but
obviously other organizations, including nonprofit organizations who are very active.
That's right. Yeah.
We recognize not everyone is able to make it tonight, so those of you that have colleagues and coworkers and friends who are interested in this topic, please share with them information from the website and where they can find the plan of study, and encourage them to provide input as well.
This is Jill. I was just gonna point out, there was one more question that popped up in the box about why the deadline was set on February 17th, which is a federal holiday. So I don't know if we wanted to state that, we wanted to have that out for that 2-week window, as Tom mentioned earlier, that there's a 2-week window for public comments, and since it came out on the 3rd, that 2-week end date is the 17th.
Yeah, that's correct. I think it's just recognizing overall this is a ambitious, historic kind of study, and that we have had a number of key milestones that are built right into the reference and the directive. And we've worked hard, all the members of the study management team, the advisors, the IJC support staff, and of course my colleagues on the study board. And so we needed to get the draft plan of study, and we needed to ensure that due diligence, and we did the work thoroughly so what we could share would be complete. And that was ready for February 3rd. That was the earliest. We tried hard to do it as fast as we could in as professional a way as possible. And that then yields us 14 days later to the 17th. So that is just a sort of, I guess, a function of the calendar. And as we know, February is filled. There are many holidays, so it was inevitable that that could happen. And hopefully that won't be a bar for anybody providing commentary.
Okay, well, I think on that note, I think we're going to bring this public webinar to a close, and just once again, extend our gratitude for all the folks. And we know there are many of you who are taking time out of your lives to come and support this work and read the document and provide your input. So I think it's safe to say on behalf of the study board that we are very grateful for the energy that you're bringing to this important work. Anything to close there, Oliver and Tom?
Just my sincere thank you to everybody. I know life is busy, and taking a few hours out of your evening is appreciated and valued by us. And we look forward to the ongoing conversation and the learning and the work ahead.
We appreciate the time you spent and your interest and care in this topic. Thank you.
Okay. Good night, everyone. Tachas.